Hey everyone, my name's David Rao. I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas obviously on Facebook, on Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter Music Education. I also have a podcast which you can find. It's the Make Moments Matter Music Education podcast. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud and a bunch of other places. Welcome back to my classroom. I just wanted to take a minute to share with you a little bit about tone blocks and how I use tone blocks at the beginning of my class with kindergarten through second grade. Last week I spent a few minutes talking just a little bit about hand drums because I had started to incorporate hand drums at the beginning of each of my classes as sort of a quick experience where kids got to play an instrument, got to do a little bit of echoing, and we rotated, and a lot of kids got to have hand drums at the beginning of class. Well, I've changed that just a little bit, and I'm introducing tone blocks, and I know that it's always nice to share a little bit about instrument procedure. It's always nice to share a little bit about technique and some things you do with kids, because it's not always the easiest to be able to do that with kids and to introduce something and to make it seamless. And so I get to do this 8 times in a row since I'm on an 8-day rotation. So I've had a little bit of chance to work out some of the kinks, at least in my classroom, and I thought I would share some of that with you. So if you're not sure what a tone block is, this is a tone block. It's just sort of like a wood blocky sound, and I use a mallet, and I don't know, kids think they're fun. They're not, I mean, super easy to introduce or use in an orchestration or anything else. I mean, you could, but they're just not as exciting maybe as like an egg shaker or a vibroslap or something like that. They're pretty sort of mundane instruments, but I like using them, especially with kindergarten, first and second grade, as a fun introductory instrument. So that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit about today. In the last video where I was talking about hand drums, I mentioned that kids come in and we do a little circle song, and then we do this copycat game, and the poem that we use goes like this: copycat, copycat, 1, 2, 3. Do what I do after me. Anything I do, you do the same. That's how you play the copycat game. And the first thing that happens is usually I clap, they clap back. Then they clap. Then they clap, then they clap. It's really easy, echo back and forth. One of the things I would say with kindergarten first and second is that when you're doing something like this, do all claps, or do all pats, or do all stomps, or all snaps, but don't mix it up. One of the things I learned in my ORF levels is that with younger kids, they can't really handle the changing of, we say levels, from one level clapping to another one stomping or another one patting. With older kids, you can go and switch between clapping and patting. Younger kids just can't. So if you're doing body percussion with them like a clap or a stomp, do all of one thing. So that's what we do. We clap back and forth, maybe 4 or 5 examples, and we say the poem again. Copycat, copycat, 1, 2, 3. Do what I do after me. We say the whole poem. Usually, if kids know it, I only have to say like the first few words. Copycat, copycat, and they just go through it. So as they're doing that, they're sitting, you can sort of see in my classroom, they're sitting in a circle, squircle, square circle, around the big dot carpet. And so what I do, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, what I do is, if I am standing behind the kids in the circle and they're doing their clapping back and forth, as they say the poem, I move to a new place. I move somewhere else around the circle for the next one. And then when we're done with that and we do copycat again, I move to another place where I'm in another place in the circle. I do that for a couple of reasons. One is that means one kid isn't just going the whole time trying to look at me, but it also means that they're getting different perspectives. If I need to go stand next to somebody who's having a behavior problem, I can do that. But it also just lets me have a little freedom to move around, and some variety. So between, as they're saying the copycat, copycat, I move to a different spot in the circle so that I can demonstrate from a different place. That's just a thing that sort of works in my classroom. Maybe it'll work for you too. So we do clapping, and then the next one we do something vocal. So usually we'll do like a vocal exploration, and I'll go woo, and the kids go woo, and then I'll go woo, and they go woo, and we do a lot of those. It's nice just because it gives them a connection between, you know, high finger is high sound, low finger is low sound, or high action goes to high, going from low to high, the sound, they make that connection. And then when you, do something like a vocal exploration, like on the smartboard or something, then they've already got it in them that going high means your voice goes high, and going low means your voice goes low. So I usually do some sort of vocal exploration. We'll say copycat again. I'll do padding. We'll say copycat again. With my first graders and second graders, I do a little bit of solfege, just echoing back and forth, but kindergarten, we're not quite there yet. And then we get to the last one, and this is where I get ready to introduce the tone block. So I say to kids, great, so hold out your hand and repeat after me. And I do 2 of those. And after the second one, I say, that was so good, it was just too loud. Maybe this time, instead of using our whole hand, can you take it and move your hand down so your thumb isn't even hitting anymore and just use 4 fingers? And we do 2 of those, and I'm gonna say, great. After doing 2 examples, great, it was great, just too loud. Maybe instead of 4 fingers, we could go down to just 3. Okay, just 3 fingers. And then they echo. And they echo. I say, that's great. It's just too loud. Instead of 3 fingers, how about just 2? And then they echo. And then they echo. Oh, that's so good. Except it's too loud. Instead of 2 fingers, can you maybe do just 1? Maybe you're just your pointer. Then they go. That's so great. Except it's too loud. And they're giggling at this point because they know it's not loud. Instead of using your whole finger, can you use just the end, just the part where your fingerprint is, just this part right here. We're not going to use this side with a nail, just the other side. Okay, just that much on your hand. Great. Oh, that's perfect. And you know what? That's exactly right because of what we're going to do next. You already have in your hand, you're ready to go, the exact thing that you're going to use because in a second, I'm going to give you one of these. This is called a mallet, and what you get to do with this mallet is you get to play, but you can't use the whole mallet. You don't use this part of the mallet. You only use the very, very, very end. It sort of looks like if this were a person, that would probably be their head, wouldn't it? It sort of looks like, what does it look like? And kids talk a little bit. It sort of looks like a bouncy ball. Yeah, and that's the part that you'd bounce. The ball part would bounce, the rest of it wouldn't bounce. Okay, let's see, and we talk a little bit about the mallet. Especially for kindergarten, they really haven't had a lot of experience with it, so we do talk a little bit. And then with most grades, I'll go around and I'll say, great, so you know a mallet. If it were just this, that'd be a stick. But because it has this part on the end, the large ball or something on one side, that makes it a mallet. I'm going to give you a test. And I go around and I pull out another one. I say, ooh, whoops. I say, is this a stick or is this a mallet? And they say, that's a mallet. I say, great. Say, that's a mallet. That's a mallet. Okay, because it has the long part here and a little ball on the end. That's perfect. What about this one? And they love looking at that one. I'm like, yeah, it's yellow. Is this a stick or is this a mallet? And they say, mallet. And I say, that's a mallet. That's a mallet. We're working on full sentences in my school. So instead of just yelling out mallet or stick, that's a mallet. That's what we do. Okay, so then they do that one. Great. Okay, how about this? Say, oh, it's a stick. That's a stick. And so they say, that's a stick. Great. And sometimes I'll even pull out the mallet and I'll compare them and I'll say, see the difference? The stick is the same on both sides. The mallet, one side, has this large thing up there. That's a mallet. Yeah, that's a mallet. Okay, how about this one? It looks different from before. Is this a mallet? And they say, that's a mallet. Okay, great. Sometimes we'll take a little time and dissect, what exactly it is. How about this one? I give them as many examples as I want / have time for. I love pulling out something like this because then they say, it does not look like the other mallet. It's not rounded. And usually I don't start with this. Usually I start with this and I pull it from the mallet container. And this one they can say, yeah, it's a mallet. I say, it looks sort of like the wheel of a car, rolling along. But it is a mallet. It's just say, that's a mallet. That's a mallet. Okay. And then a few examples later, I'll pull this one out because they are sort of similar in shape on the end, sort of a donut shape or a tire shape. So then they say, that's a mallet. Yeah, that's a mallet. I say, I know it looks like it's like a marshmallow. You wouldn't want to eat it though. It's not a marshmallow. It's not good to eat. But it is a mallet because it has a long stick shape, but one side has something on it, something larger. And then I always, of course, pull out this stick, which came with my the gankuis, the sort of go-go bell things, and it looks like a stick, so they love that one. And then I always also pull out Big Tom, because this is the one used for the bass bars, and they love this one. So I always pull that example out. But then usually I cycle back and I say, great, but this mount, this is the mount that you get to use. And when you hold the mount, you want to hold the side, not the side with the ball. You hold the other side, because this is the part you're going to play. And I say, now, you don't have a mallet in your hand yet. Instead, can you just use your fingertip on your hand, and I'll play and you echo. Then they echo. Great, except if we only use mallets on our hands, it might hurt. So let me give you an instrument. This instrument is one of my favorite instruments, and it's called a tone block. By the way, I have a class set of these for some reason. So I use them when I can with large groups because I've got the instruments for it. This is called and if you don't, they're very cheap. Okay, so I say this is called a tone block, and I know it sort of looks like an ice cream cone, doesn't it? But if it were an ice cream cone, would you hold it like this? And I say, no, you're being silly. Yeah, right, we'd never hold it like this, because if it were an ice cream cone, you get ice cream all over your hands. So you hold it like this down on the bottom part, and if it were an ice cream cone, and you imagine there's, scoops of ice cream, you eat all of it down until just the cone's left. The first place you would take a bite on this cone, if it were an ice cream cone, is probably right here, because you go and eat, and there might be some ice cream in that bite too, right? Yeah. They like visualizing an ice cream cone. I say, that's actually where you play. You take your mallet, and the head of the mallet, the ball part, is going to play right where you take your first bite. That's where you play on the mallet, and so then we try it. And then they don't have any instruments yet, so they just use their finger in their hand, okay? And then I say, I'm going to come around and I'm going to give tone blocks and mallets to each kid, because you need a tone block and you need the mallet to play it. So actually, I don't think I have enough for each kid. I'll give tone blocks to some kids. Maybe you can figure out who's getting tone blocks and why. And so then I choose a kid to walk around behind me with a bucket of mallets, because I've got, in just a little Dollar General bucket here, I've got all the mallets. And so I have a kid walk around behind me, and I say, whoever I give a tone block to, give them a mallet, because they'll need a mallet. So that one kid's like, I'm large and in charge. So I'm handing out tone blocks to every other kid, and I keep saying, see if you can figure out who gets a tone block and why. And that helps, once they realize, ooh, it's a pattern, then that helps the kid who doesn't get one feel like, oh, I don't feel so bad because it's a pattern. You could even do tone block and then 2 blanks in between, so it's every third kid, and I think they'd be fine. I have enough for every other kid, so we go with that. So then I say, great, if you've got a tone block, you're going to repeat after me, and if you don't have a tone block, you're going to just use your finger on your hand. But whatever you do, you need to repeat my pattern somehow.
Could I please get a custodian to take the trash cans back to the cafeteria?
Still at school, so
Please take the trash
not that long after school, so you're going to hear all the announcements, custodians going to the lunchroom. Anyway, so then I do a pattern, and they echo. And they echo. And even if some kid is like banging on it, I don't say anything at this point, because it might be that they will see other kids not doing that and figure it out. And if not, I'm only going to give them about 6 examples before we rotate, so it's not a super huge deal at this point, because it's not a prolonged thing. And also these are like indestructible, so like who cares? And they're really cheap. So after about the 5 or 6 that each kid gets to do, I say, hold out your tone block, and then take your mallet and put it inside, because they want to do that anyway, and so I'm just letting them do it. So I say, great, now take the tone block and pass it to the person on your left. And remember, they're in a circle. So in kindergarten especially, but even first and second, I do this. If they're sitting in a circle, I say, pass it to the person on your left. On your left is the direction I'm pointing. On your left, and I go all the way around the circle, because Lord knows they can't figure it out. So I go around and I point, what's to your left, what's to your left? And so then they pass it off to the person on their left. Great, the new kid has it, then you take your mallet and you get to play. Okay, great, and we do. Simple examples, they echo, they do their thing. Okay, so once we've done 2 rotations, then I'll say something like, You know, and that second kid, now every kid has had an experience with one, and if you're doing every third kid, you might want to go a third rotation before you break up the process. But now each kid has done it, and each kid has done it 5 or 6 times, different patterns. Say, put your tone block down, put your mallet down, and let me show you another tone block. So they put them down on the floor, and I pull out this tone block I have, because I have 2 different kinds, and I say, what's the difference? We take a second, we talk about different color, one is longer, this one has more ridges, and so we talk a little bit about that, and I say, because they look different in a lot of different ways, do you think they're gonna sound the same or different? And that's another thing we talk about in kindergarten is same versus different and contrast, and they're using their context clues, and so most of them say different. Some of them say the same, but most of them say different. I say, let's check. Oh, they sound different. Isn't that exciting? And they're like, oh yeah, that's great. And I say, but let me show you something. This is a really nice tone block, but I gotta show you a sad tone block. Look at this one. And they're like, oh, we don't see anything really that's different. I say, yeah, I know you can't see it, but I had a second grader who came in and went as hard as he could. And now listen to this. It's supposed to sound like this. And this one sounds like this. Not as good. This one is broken. And it's sad, I don't want to throw it away, but it's broken, it's really not very good anymore. And if you take your tone block and hit it as hard as you can, it might break too. So you gotta be very, very careful with the tone blocks. Even though they're nice instruments and they're in great shape, we gotta keep them in great shape. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so like life lesson, okay. So then we maybe do 2 more patterns, put the mallet in, pass it, and go. So the next rotation, for me it's my third, and if I'm going every other kid, that means the first kid who got a tone block has a tone block again. So now I do something a little bit different. I do 2 or 3 echo patterns, and then I say, I'm gonna play here on the top, where you take your first bite on the ice cream cone, but I wanna see if maybe you play somewhere else. Maybe you'll play here, maybe you'll play here, maybe you'll play here. Maybe you'll play with a different part of the mallet. Maybe you'll play somewhere else. I want to see what you can come up with. So I do my pattern, and they'll echo wherever they want to echo. Or whatever. They do whatever they want to do. And I give them options. I let them do 3 or 4 of those. It's fun for them to explore it, and it helps them along in the process. So I let them do that. Great. Okay, now go back to the ice cream spot and see if you can keep a steady beat with me. And I do my steady beat. We do that for a few seconds. Once I can see everyone's doing it, great. Okay, now take your tone block, put your mallet in, and pass to your left. So in a few seconds that kid has had it, we've done 5 or 6 echo patterns. I let them echo 5 or 6 more in a different place on the instrument, and then we do our steady beat, and then we rotate. That's a lot. I mean, that's 3 basically different concepts, because it's echo, imitation, and then it's exploration of the instrument, and then it's steady beat, so beat versus rhythm, all in just a few seconds. And then on that 4th rotation, those kids get to do the same things as before. And if the kids aren't playing, they can just use their finger on their hand. Most kids are fine with that. Some kids, if they're not playing, they watch someone else who is playing. And I really don't mind if they're doing that, because they're seeing the instrument from a different perspective and getting a different idea about it and sort of watching, and then maybe they can mimic later or not. It really depends. But I think it's okay for kids to watch that. One thing I sometimes do is sometimes I try and lead the playing inside, but usually that doesn't really go anywhere, because they don't really have the hand-eye coordination or the dexterity to be able to do back and forth. It just sort of sounds, so I don't really go there. But I do have them put their mallet in there because they want to do it anyway, and because then you can rotate, and then they're just passing 1 thing instead of 2. That really does help with my rotation. One of the things sometimes I'll do if I'm seeing it happen a lot is I say, okay, be careful when you play that your stick is not hitting the tone block. You really want the ball part, the head of the mallet, to hit here. Otherwise, if it were okay for the stick part to hit on there, I'd just give you a stick. But I didn't. I gave you a mallet, and that's because this part is the part that's really important, and that's what needs to tap. So, I mean, if you see kids just consistently doing this, you could say, you know, you could talk about how it's important to use the mallet. It really depends. I mean, it's totally up to what you want to do, and how much time you want to take. Honestly, this whole process of the copycat, the coming in, the circle song, the copycat, and 3 or 4 different levels, plus the tone block, maybe takes 15 minutes. But we cover a lot of stuff. So I think it's worth it. When it's time to put away, the first day I had kids just put their mallet in here, and whoever had it last brought it up. but then that was sort of messy if some kids like, you know, going from the tone block to the mallet thing and getting confused or whatever. So what I've done in the last couple rotations, and it's worked really well, as I've said, if you have the tone block and the mallet, this time hold on to the tone block, but give your mallet to the person on the left. Just the mallet, only the mallet, give that to the person on the left. So now the pattern, instead of everything, nothing, everything, nothing, everything, nothing, everything, nothing, is that now you have tone block for one kid, the next kid has a mallet, the next kid has a tone block, the next kid has a mallet, and that's sort of nice because then you can say, great, if you got the tone block, bring it up and put it inside the tone block box, and if you and then so you wait, once all those kids have sort of cleared out, you say, great, now if you have the mallet, and this is just me being anal about it, but if you have the mallet, come and bring it and make sure that the ball part is on top. Like if it's floating in the water, that's the part that's going to stay on top. So let the head of the mallet float to the top, and then you end up with all your mallets like this instead of all different ways. It just makes it easier for me later, but I mean, that's not really important. But I have one kid bring the tone block up, and then we clear all those out, and then the mallets can put theirs away, and then they clear all of that out. I think tone blocks are underrated. I think they're especially great for K1 too. So, because not only does this give you a chance to echo and do steady beat and whatever in a different way, it also gives kids a chance to try and do one hand a mallet, the other hand an instrument, and to use a mallet. That's not easy for kids to do at first, and so this gives them a chance to do that with only one sound, as opposed to if you put them on like a glockenspiel or a xylophone. There are so many ways for them to play, so many places they could play, or so many ways for some kids that they could mess up and they get nervous about it. There is really no way to mess up with this. Even if they're, you know, doing this and they're hitting the stick on there instead of the head of the mallet, it's really not a big deal. So I like tone blocks for that reason. I don't use them a ton of the time, but for this specific activity, they're great. Anyway, that's my little trick with tone blocks and how I use them a little bit more frequently with kids in just that echo situation. Eventually, I could add another instrument to the copycat game. I could add, you know, more rotations or less rotations. Or if I wanted, I could hand out hand drums to half and tone blocks to half, and then we could rotate that. That would be interesting. Few more logistical things to work out, but definitely interesting. Once this live video is done, I'm going to post it on my Facebook page. So if you're reading this now, or sorry, watching this now, or if you're watching it later and you have a great tone block idea or activity or thing that you use it for, if you say like, that might not work in my school, but if I adapt it this way, if you're thinking that, maybe leave a comment on the Facebook video. Leave a comment so that anyone else who watches this video and sees the commentary can sort of see, oh yeah, I see that, you know, Selena would do it this way, or I see that Ashley said she would whatever, or I see that Dane was like, oh yeah, I could use this instead, or maybe not tone blocks, but I have those wood blocks on a stick, or whatever. Your commentary and your questions and things that you leave here help everyone else who watched the video. So thanks so much for leaving those comments or questions. Thanks for everyone for tuning in and watching today. I know it was a sort of a pop-up surprise video, but thanks for coming along and watching anyway. I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you're able to incorporate the tone block into your classroom.